My wife, Tara, threw the words, "dirty plumber," at me during a fight, and right then, I told her she'd better apologize, but she flat out refused. That's when I made a choice that flipped our whole world upside down. Hey there, folks, I appreciate you sticking with me on this. Your support keeps me going, and it means a ton. If you're digging these tales, hit that subscribe button. We're chasing our first 1,000 subscribers, and you'd be helping big time. Drop a comment with your city, too, we might give you a holler in the next one. Today's shout out goes to Pat Hansen from Nevada. Glad you're enjoying the ride, Pat. Alright, let's get into the meat of this story. Rain was coming down like a waterfall, pounding the roof of my beat-up old pickup as I bounced along a street full of potholes, heading home. My hands were locked tight on the steering wheel, knuckles turning pale, not 'cause of the storm, but 'cause every bone in my body ached like hell. I'd been on my feet 12 hours straight, half that time wading through a sewer trench up to my knees, fighting a busted pipe that spewed nasty sludge all over my shirt. Even after scrubbing my hands raw at the gas station, that sour stink stuck to me like a bad memory. My muddy boots squished against the pedals, leaving little clumps behind. I just wanted a steaming shower, an ice-cold beer, and a few minutes of peace before life started yelling at me again. Home's this rundown brick apartment building smack in the middle of Bristol, a gritty little working-class town where rust and sweat are part of the scenery. The streetlights were flickering on and off, throwing dim yellow glows across the busted-up sidewalk as I pulled in and climbed out of the truck. My toolbox smacked against my leg as I got out. It's like an extra limb to me by now. I trudged up the stairs to the second floor, every creaky step moaning under my weight, and fumbled with my keys till the door popped open. There stood Tara in our tiny living room, looking like a thunderstorm about to let loose. "You see this?" she barked, flapping a wrinkled piece of paper in her fist. Her voice cut through the room like a knife. She had on one of my old flannel shirts over leggings, her dark hair yanked back tight, but her eyes were blazing with something wild. "Rent notice. Late again, Sam. What's your excuse this time?" I stopped dead in the doorway, rain dripping off my jacket and soaking into the ratty carpet. The place smelled like burnt toast and old coffee, with takeout boxes and dirty clothes spilling over the couch. It ain't much, just a saggy sofa, a TV with a busted remote, and a kitchen counter buried in dishes, but it's ours. Or at least it was. I set my toolbox down real slow, like it might break if I wasn't careful, and dragged a hand across my face. "I paid it," I said, my voice rough and worn out from the day. "Last week. Check the damn bank if you don't believe me." Tara didn't move an inch. She flung the notice onto the coffee table, where it landed in a pile of empty soda cans. "Oh, I'm supposed to take your word for it, huh, Mr. Fix-Everything, who can't even keep us from drowning? I'm so done with this, Sam, done scraping by while you act like some big-shot pipe wizard." Her words hit hard, but I've taken worse after 7 years of marriage. Her tongue's gotten sharper every year. I kicked off my boots, mud crumbling onto the floor, and shuffled toward the kitchen. "It's been a hell of a day, Tara. Can we skip the fight just this once?" "Nope, we're hashing this out now," she said, trailing me with her bare feet smacking the linoleum. "You think I don't see you stumbling in here, reeking like a garbage heap, expecting me to just grin and whip up some food? I ain't your personal chef, Sam." I jerked the fridge open, the weak light hitting my face, square jaw, tired eyes, and a scruffy beard I hadn't bothered shaving. "I don't expect a damn thing," I grumbled, snagging a beer. The cat popped off with a sharp hiss. "Figured you'd notice I'm busting my ass out there. Sewer line blew today, took 6 hours to fix. Overtime's on the way. We're good." "Good?" She let out a harsh laugh that echoed off the peeling wallpaper. "You're kidding, right, Sam? Look at you, filthy and barely scraping by to keep this dump. I deserve more than this, more than you." I took a gulp of beer, but the cold didn't touch the fire building up in my chest. I turned to face her, leaning on the counter while water dripped from my hair down my neck. "Run that by me again," I said, keeping my voice low, a little edge creeping in. Her lips twisted into a smirk, eyes squinting at me. "You're a dirty plumber, Sam. That's all you'll ever amount to." Everything stopped. The rain was hammering the windows outside like a drum, but inside, it felt like the air just vanished. Dirty plumber. 2 little words, nothing fancy, but they slammed into me like a fist. I've spent years dragging home late, skipping dinners, pouring every penny I've got into this life for her. That new coat she rocked last winter. My overtime cash. The laptop she uses for her side gigs. My bloody knuckles paid for it. And now she's standing there, calling me a dirty plumber, like I'm nothing. "Say you're sorry," I told her, plunking my beer down on the counter with a sharp clink. My voice stayed level, but my hands were shaking a little at my sides. "Do it now, Tara." She blinked at me, thrown off for a second, then smirked like I'd said something funny. "Sorry for what, Sam?" "For spitting the truth. You stink like a sewer, deal with it." Something broke inside me right then, not a big, loud crash, but a quiet little fracture, like a pipe finally giving out after too much strain. I just stared at her, this woman I used to love, or at least thought I did back in the day. Her face was all hard edges and attitude now, not a hint of that sweetness I fell for when we were young, stupid, and betting love could patch up anything. I didn't yell or chuck the bottle across the room, just gave her a slow nod, like I was finally catching on to a fact I'd been too worn out to face. "That's it, we're through," I said, plain and simple. Her smirk wobbled a bit. "Huh? You heard what I said." I crossed the room, scooped my toolbox off the floor, and hefted it onto my shoulder. It felt heavy, real, like the one thing I could trust. "I'm done being your doormat, Tara. No more." "Sam, hold up," she took a step toward me, her voice jumping higher, but I was already reaching for the door. "You can't just bail like that. Watch me do it." I twisted the knob hard, the hinges screeching like a wounded animal, and stepped out into the hallway. The rain slammed into me as I headed down the stairs, soaking my jacket, my jeans, and damn near my whole spirit. My truck sat there waiting, a blurry shape in the downpour. I tossed my toolbox into the bed with a loud bang, climbed inside, and shut the door with a thud. The engine coughed to life, headlights stabbing through the darkness. I didn't glance back, not at the apartment window where I knew she was standing, not at the life I was ditching. The wipers were going crazy across the windshield, but they couldn't do a thing about the haze in my eyes. I just drove, the road rolling out wet and endless in front of me, and all I could hear was my own voice bouncing around in my skull, "We're done," mixing with the storm that swallowed me up. I ain't the type for fancy speeches or big dreams. I fix stuff like pipes, drains, and crappers, the things folks ignore till they bust. I tried fixing this too, you know, this marriage, this life that's been leaking slow for years. But some messes can't be patched up, and some words stick too deep to pull back. The town's lights shrank in my rear view as I squeezed the wheel tighter, the cold creeping into my bones. I didn't have a plan or a destination, just knew I had to get out, away from her, from that constant jab of her contempt, from the guy I'd turned into living under it. The rain kept pounding down, and the hurt didn't ease up either. Still, for the first time in forever, I felt something else bubbling up, not hope, not quite, but a little room, like a gap big enough to suck in some air. Ben's spare room hit me with a whiff of motor oil and disappointment, like a garage where someone's life got stuck halfway done. I stretched out on his lumpy couch, staring up at a ceiling where a big water stain sprawled out like some gloomy cloud. Boxes were piled all around, some marked tools or winter gear, others just scribbled with a faint stuff in marker. Ben hadn't bothered unpacking since he moved in 2 years back, and I wasn't in the mood to bug him about it. The couch springs poked into my back through the skimpy blanket, and every time I rolled over, the whole thing groaned like it was pleading for a break. Sleep wasn't happening, not with the rain still hammering outside, reminding me of last night, and not with Tara's voice stuck in my head, dirty plumber, like a busted record I couldn't chuck out a window. I'd rolled up to Ben's place after midnight, dripping wet, my toolbox swinging from one hand. My little brother, he's taller, skinnier, with messy sandy hair and that easy grin, didn't grill me with questions, he just swung the door open, handed me a towel, and nodded at the couch. "Crash here as long as you want, dude," he said before shuffling off to bed. I envied that about Ben, how he could brush off the world like it was a loose screw he'd deal with later. For me, everything felt jammed up, rusted over, about to break apart. Morning snuck in, all gray and slow. My phone started buzzing on the armrest, Tara's name lighting up the screen. I squinted at it, eyes gritty from no sleep, and let it vibrate, till it quit. Then it buzzed again, 2 texts this time. I didn't open them, didn't have to, I could picture it already. First the nasty sting, all, "How could you ditch me like this?" Then the sweet hook, like, "Sam, come on, can't we just talk?" I flipped my phone screen down on the armrest and dragged myself up, my joints cracking like rusty old pipes groaning under pressure. That fight with Tara kept playing in my head anyway, sneaking in like an unwelcome guest, her nasty smirk, the way she stood there with her arms folded, practically begging me to snap. And snap I did. I stumbled into Ben's cramped bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, catching a glimpse in the mirror of a guy I hardly knew anymore, sunken cheeks, dark bags under my eyes, jaw locked up tighter than a seized bolt. My clothes still had that faint sewer funk clinging to them, so I rummaged through my duffel for a creased flannel shirt and some stiff, worn-out jeans. Work was calling, a dripping faucet at a duplex across town, and I craved the steady beat of it, the clang of my tools, the satisfaction of solving something I could actually handle. Ben was in the kitchen, flipping a pancake with a fancy twirl that ended up splattering it across the counter. "Rise and shine, Grumpy," he hollered, flashing me a grin over his shoulder. His greasy t-shirt hung off him, and an unlit cigarette dangled from his mouth. He'd kicked the habit but still liked the tough guy vibe. "Sleep like a king or what?" "More like a rock," I fibbed, snagging my toolbox off the floor. "Gotta bounce." "Whoa there, tough guy." Ben slid a plate my way across the counter, pancakes, a little crispy around the edges, swimming in syrup. "Eat something. You look like a zombie who forgot to die." I paused, then plopped down on a stool. That first bite hit me with a sticky sweetness, a tiny break from the mess in my head. Ben propped himself against the fridge, sipping coffee from a beat-up mug. "So, you gonna spill why you're bunking here, or do I get to play detective? Tara torched the apartment or something?" "It's over," I said, my voice landing hard and flat like a swung hammer. "That's the deal." Ben let out a low whistle. "Holy hell. 7 years down the drain, huh? What did she do, come at you with a frying pan?" "She hit me with, dirty plumber," I muttered, and my voice cracked on it, hated that it did. "And she damn well meant every word." Ben's grin dropped fast. He set his mug down and scratched at his neck, looking uneasy. "That's brutal, man. Even for Tara." He hesitated, then tried to lighten the mood. "Could have been worse, though, she didn't call you smelly. Small win, right?" I didn't crack a smile. I shoved the plate back, still half loaded with food, and got to my feet. "Catch you later." The job was at a duplex on Elm Street, paint flaking off the walls, gutters drooping like they'd thrown in the towel years ago. I pulled my truck up, grabbed my gear, and stepped out into air so damp it stuck to me like a second skin. Inside, the tenant, a skinny old dude with a hyper little terrier nipping at my heels, pointed me to the kitchen sink. A slow, steady drip plopped into a mixing bowl, almost calming in its rhythm. I dropped to my knees, popped open my toolbox, and got after it, wrench turning, swapped out a washer, checked the flow. Fixed. Solid. Over. The guy mumbled a thanks and slipped me a wrinkled 10 spot as a bonus. I tucked it in my pocket, gave him a nod, and hit the road. Next up was a bigger mess, a strip mall with a basement turned swamp. I rolled in next to a white van with River Plumbing slapped on the side, the outfit I'd been with for 10 years now. Another plumber was already down there, hunched over a sump pump, Julia, her dark ponytail bouncing as she tinkered. She glanced up, her brown eyes quick but kind, and tossed me a short nod. "Hey, Sam. You're late, man. Figured the rain swallowed you whole." "Pretty much," I said, setting my tools down beside her. She'd only been on the crew about 6 months, but she was rock solid. Word was she's a single mom with a kid and a gift for clearing pipes faster than anybody. Didn't chatter much, didn't have to, her hands showed you she knew her way around. We dove into the chaos together, water up to our ankles, pipes all twisted up, a pump squealing like it was on its last legs. I zeroed in hard, blocking out the crap swirling in my brain, letting the work pull me under. Julia stayed right with me, smooth and no nonsense. When we finally got the water flowing out, she stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Nice job," she said. "You've got a knack for this." I shrugged it off like it was nothing, but her words hung there, good at this. Not filthy, not worthless, just good. She grabbed a thermos from her van, poured 2 styrofoam cups full of hot, black coffee, and handed me one. "Take 5. You look like you're running on fumes." I grabbed the coffee, feeling the warmth soak into my hands. We propped ourselves against Julia's van, sipping quietly while cars kicked up sprays of water on the slick road. Then, out of nowhere, she tossed out, "Real casual, tough night, huh?" "More like a tough life," I fired back, sharper than I meant to, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. She arched an eyebrow but didn't dig deeper. I eased up a bit. "Wife problems. Guess she's my ex-wife now." Julia gave a little nod, like she'd been down that road herself. "I hear you. My guy bailed when my kid was 2. Sometimes it's a relief when they finally take off." I really looked at her then, took in the worn lines around her eyes, the way she stood tough but steady. No feeling sorry for me, no preaching, just straight up truth. "Yeah," I rasped, my throat scratchy. "Could be." She smirked, a spark of playfulness lighting up her face. "Least you've got your pipes, they don't sass you back." A laugh slipped out of me, small, rough around the edges, but honest. First time I'd cracked a smile in days, maybe longer, like ice splintering to let something warm peek through. We polished off our coffee, chucked the cups, and jumped back into the grind. That night, sprawled on Ben's couch again, my phone started buzzing. "Tara, same as always." I let it sit there like I had before, but the heaviness pressed down harder this time. I fished an old spiral notebook out of my bag, meant for jotting down work stuff, and grabbed a chewed-up pencil. The words stumbled out slow and messy, dripping onto the page like a leaky faucet. "She never saw who I was, just the grime," I scratched out. I stared at the shaky letters glowing faintly in the dim light, then snapped the notebook shut. Sleep didn't come quick, but when it hit, it sank deeper than the night before. The weeks just melted together after that, a haze of copper tubing, trickling faucets, and my truck's engine growling through Bristol's dreary mornings. My hands knew the drill now, spinning wrenches, fitting joints, patching leaks like it was second nature, as easy as breathing. Work wasn't just cash in my pocket anymore, it was my lifeline, something firm to grab onto while the rest of my world sank into mush. I'd roll off Ben's squeaky couch before the sun came up, the room thick with the smell of dusty boxes and engine grease, and bolt out the door before he could sling another wisecrack my way. Routine became my shield, work, scribble in my notebook, crash, and I leaned into it hard, like it was part of me. Ben's spare room wasn't just a pit stop anymore, it felt more like a burrow, those unpacked boxes stacking up around me like the sides of a ditch. Didn't bother me much, the clutter fit the jumble rattling around in my skull, all these bits I couldn't piece back together yet. My phone mostly stayed quiet, flipped to "Do Not Disturb," but the gossip still crept in. Old buddies from high school, couples we used to drink with, they dropped these hints, acting all casual but loaded with meaning. "Tara's back at it online," they'd say, like they were feeling me out. "Claims you ditched her over nothing. Says she's finally rid of the baggage." I just nod, jam my hands in my pockets, and mumble, "Good for her." Didn't snap back, didn't check her posts to see the wreckage, but those words still dug in, little barbs snagging at the raw spots I couldn't armor up. The job sites were my hideout. Monday, I wrestled a busted water heater at a laundromat, steam spitting like an angry beast, till I tamed it. Tuesday, I tackled a grease-choked drain at a diner, the cook slipped me a free burger as a thank you. Wednesday, I teamed up with Julia again, both of us wading through a flooded cellar at some old warehouse. She was a regular now, her white van parked next to my truck more often than not. Never hovered, never nosed around, just worked, calm and solid, her quiet skill smoothing out my rough nerves. We'd slip into this easy groove, handing off tools without talking, the clatter of metal and splash of water drowning out the silence. One afternoon, stretched out on a gravel patch outside the warehouse, we shared her thermos of coffee, dark, punchy stuff that jolted you alive. The sun was dipping low, splashing orange across the sky, and Julia nudged a pebble with her boot. "You ever spill about it?" she asked, eyes off somewhere else. "The ex, I mean." I took a slow sip, the heat burning my tongue a little. "Not a lot to tell. She couldn't stand me. So I walked." She let out a quick, dry chuckle. "Know that tune? Mine hated me too, till he didn't anymore. Ran off with some bartender chick, left me with a 2-year-old and a pile of debt. Best move he ever made, hitting the road." I shot her a look, caught off guard. She didn't usually crack herself open like that, but there it was, real and steady, no sugarcoating. "You don't sound pissed," I said. Was at first, bawled my eyes out, smashed a few dishes. She flashed a small, genuine grin. Then I realized I could breathe without him weighing me down. Took some time, but I got there. I chewed on that, the thought of breathing easy again. "I gave her all I had," I said, my voice dropping low, like I was spilling a secret to the rocks under us. "Overtime shifts, weekends, every last dime." She'd still glare at me like I was some piece of junk stuck to her heel. Julia gave me a nod, her eyes free of pity, just pure, quiet understanding. "Some folks can't spot what's staring them in the face," she said. "They're too caught up chasing shadows that ain't even there." I didn't say a word back, just sipped my coffee and let her take settle in my head. As we wrapped up later, she chucked a wrench I'd dropped my way. "You ain't garbage, Sam," she told me, straight and simple, like it was carved in stone. "Don't let her trick you into thinking you are." Those words stuck, bouncing around in my brain as I drove home, my truck's headlights carving up the twilight. Not trash. I wanted to buy into that, but Tara's venom, funneled through those damn buddies of ours, kept chewing at me, relentless. Come Friday, I'd had enough. I punched out early, ditched my work boots for some beat-up sneakers, and rolled up to the Rusty Nail, a rundown joint on the outskirts where the jukebox croaked out twangy old country and the beer didn't dent your wallet. The place was barely alive, just a handful of weathered regulars hunched over their mugs, a bartender polishing glasses with a rag older than dirt. I slid onto a stool, the vinyl torn and tacky under me, and ordered a draft. Then another. The buzz kicked in quick, warm, fuzzy, loosening the tangle in my chest. I yanked my phone out, my thumb hovering over Tara's name. Her last text glared up at me from 3 days back, "You're a coward, Sam. Running doesn't fix this." Rage flared up, wild and hot. I could dial her right then, dump 7 years of bottled up pain, tell her exactly where she could cram her dead-weight nonsense. My finger twitched, then locked up. The bar lights smeared together, my stomach churning with beer, and I pictured it, her smug voice cutting through the line, flipping it all back on me. She'd come out on top. She always did, even if I screamed. "Son of a," I growled, hurling my phone across the booth. It slid fast, smacked the wall with a dull thud, and flopped screen down onto the sticky floor. The bartender shot me a bored look. "You busted, you're paying." I blew him off and dug my spiral notebook out of my jacket instead. The pencil was worn to a stub, but it'd get the job done. I flipped to a fresh page, creased and soft from all those late-night scribbles, and let it rip. "She's toxic," I scratched out, the letters jagged and fierce. "I busted my ass for years, and she labels me nothing. Filthy. Like I'm some stain she can't scrub away. I'm through bleeding for her." The words poured out sloppy and fast, a dam breaking loose. I held her life together, rent, clothes, that damn car, and she never noticed. Never saw me. I kept at it, pages flipping, fury burning into something rawer, cleaner. I ain't the bad guy here. She can holler it to anyone who'll listen, but I know what I poured in, and I'm claiming it back. My hand ached, the pencil carving dents into my thumb, but I didn't give a damn. The bar melted away, the clink of bottles, the wail of steel strings, till it was just me and that paper, the load getting lighter with every word. When I finally quit, the notebook felt thicker, packed with ink and honesty. I stuffed it back in my pocket, snatched my phone, screen cracked but kicking, and staggered out into the night. The air hit me sharp and cool, slicing through the booze fog. I didn't call her, didn't need to anymore. Those pages had it all, like a roadmap of where I'd been and where I was headed. Back at Ben's, I crashed onto the couch, the springs whining under me. Sleep slammed in quick and heavy, the kind that didn't wrestle me awake. The journal stayed right there, tucked under my arm like a guard. The little place above Murphy's Hardware wasn't fancy, just a single room with a sloped ceiling, a mattress tossed on the floor, and a hot plate plugged into a shaky outlet. A beat-up folding chair sat by the window, looking out over the alley where delivery trucks growled in at sunrise. I'd lugged my toolbox up the tight stairs 3 months back, sealed a month-to-month deal with a quick handshake, and staked my claim. Bare walls, scratched-up floors, it wasn't much, but it was mine, earned with my own grind, no baggage, no echoes. I'd ditched Ben's couch for good, needing a spot where the air didn't buzz with someone else's story. Here, the stillness belonged to me, broken only by the odd rattle of pipes in the old bones of the building or the squeak of my boots on warped wood. It was a Thursday night, the sky turning a deep purple outside, when a knock landed, soft, unsure, not the heavy thud of a delivery driver or a neighbor sniffing for loose change. I stopped mid-bite, a half-gone sandwich in my grip, and shuffled over to the door. I yanked the door open, and there she stood, Tara, lurking in the shadowy hallway like a ghost that had slipped out of my past. Her dark hair drooped flat around a face paler than I recalled, her eyes puffy and shiny with tears. She had on a flimsy jacket, way too thin for the cold snap, her hands fidgeting like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. "Sam," she said, her voice tiny, breaking at the seams. "Can I step inside?" I didn't budge, just gawked at her, my half-eaten sandwich hanging limp in my hand. It had been months, 4, maybe 5, since I stormed out into that soaking wet night. I'd thrown up a barricade of silence, dodging her messages, her calls, the trash she'd been spewing online. Now here she was, showing up out of nowhere, shrinking under the weak flicker of the hallway light. My stomach knotted, not from missing her, but from something darker, heavier. Maybe dread, or the dull ache of scars I thought had healed. Without a word, I shifted aside and let her in. She lingered by the door, her gaze bouncing around my bare-bones room, the mattress, the lone chair, a pile of plumbing code books I'd borrowed from the library. "This is your place now, she asked, a shaky edge to her voice. This is where you've been hiding. It's mine, I said, dropping my sandwich onto the counter, a scratched-up slab of formica that came with the gig. What are you here for, Tara? She gulped hard, wrapping her arms tight around herself. I screwed up, Sam, I get it now. I've been chewing on it, on us, and I was dead wrong. That stuff I said that night, her voice cracked, and she dropped her eyes, lashes glistening. I didn't mean it. I was angry, freaked out, but I never wanted to cut you that deep. I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, sizing her up. She looked softer now, stripped of that poison she'd slung during our last blowout. Her hand trembled as she brushed hair off her face, and for a split second, I glimpsed the girl I'd fallen for at 19, nervous and bright, doodling on napkins at the diner while we split fries. But that version of her was long gone, drowned under years of sharp words and finger-pointing. You didn't just hurt me, I said, keeping my tone even, no fire in it. You ripped me to pieces, day after day, year after year. Her head jerked up, eyes popping wide. That's not right, Sam. I was drowning too, work sucked, money was tight, everything. You think I enjoyed scrapping with you? I was in over my head. Me too, I shot back, stepping closer so my shadow fell over her. Up all night, working double shifts, busting my ass on jobs I despised just to keep us afloat. I had the rent covered early, Tara, and you still shoved that stupid notice in my face, called me filthy, like I was a nobody. I didn't mean it, she yelped, her voice spiking high. I was ticked off, all right. You were never around, always wiped out, and I felt so damn alone. I snapped. But I'm sorry, Sam. I swear. She reached out, her fingers grazing my sleeve, and I didn't pull back, not right away. I glanced at her hand, then up to her face, desperate, brittle, a chink in that tough shell she'd worn forever. You're sorry now, I said, dragging the words out slow, 'cause you're adrift without me. Not 'cause you actually see who I am. That's not it, she insisted, tears spilling down her cheeks in messy streaks. I miss you, Sam. The apartment's a tomb. I can't sleep. I need you back. We can patch this up. Please. The air got thick, loaded with her pleas and that faint lavender smell she always carried. I felt it tugging at me, the old reflex to cave, the habit of smoothing over her tantrums with apologies I didn't owe her. I could have done it again, could this be fixed? Could I tweak it, stop the bleeding? But then it hit me, those nights I'd drag and exhausted, her sneer ready to pounce, how she'd whittled me down to a speck in her flawless little world. Nah, I said, stepping back so her hand dropped off me. We're past that. Sam, she choked out my name, reaching again, but I shook my head. I poured everything into you, I told her, my voice low and solid, like a bolt locking tight. Overtime I didn't get a dime for, meals I skipped, every scrap of me. And you turned me into nothing, like I was just your handyman, not your man. I ain't that guy anymore. She went still, lips quivering, then slumped into the folding chair, her shoulders caving in. So that's that. You're finished. 7 years, and you just walk off. I walked off months ago, I said. You're the one who didn't catch on. The silence stretched out, thin and icy. She swiped at her face, got up, and shuffled to the door, her hand resting on the knob. I loved you, you know, she murmured, not turning around. Maybe not the right way, but I did. I didn't say a thing. The door clicked shut behind her, swallowing the sound of her steps fading down the stairs. I stood there, locked on the spot where she'd been, doubt sneaking in like damp through a seam. Did I just toss out something worth keeping? Was that softness her last rope, and I'd snipped it too fast? I dropped onto the mattress, elbows digging into my knees, and raked a hand through my hair as the stillness closed in tight. My phone buzzed loud enough to snap me bolt upright. I snatched it off the counter. Julia's name glowed on the screen. Yeah. I answered, my voice still gravelly from sleep. Hey, she came back, chipper but measured. You tied up? Cody's bike chain jumped off again, and he's about to drive me up the wall. You're way handier with this stuff than I am. I let out a long breath, feeling that tight knot in my chest ease up just a hair. Yeah, I can roll over. Give me 20 minutes. Awesome. Catch you soon. She clicked off, and I sat there a second, the phone still warm in my grip. Julia, solid, no drama, just her kid and a bike that needed some love. Nothing huge, nothing crushing, just a small ask I could handle. I grabbed my jacket and toolbox, heading out as the stairs groaned under my boots. The alley air smacked me with a clean, crisp bite, sweeping away the faint whiff of Tara's lavender that had hung around like a bad dream. Doubt still nagged at me, a quiet hum in the back of my head, but I shoved it deep. I'd patched up plenty of busted things, this time, I wasn't fixing what wouldn't stick. Sunrise busted through the horizon early, tossing golden streaks past the warped blinds in my little spot above Murphy's Hardware. I rolled awake on the mattress, the springs staying quiet for once, like they'd finally quit griping about holding me up. No alarm needed lately, I'd been waking with the light, a rhythm I'd carved out while shaking off the old ghosts. I stretched out, my joints popping off a little symphony of cracks, and swung my legs over the side. The room caught the soft dawn glow, those plain walls soaking it up, and for a minute, I just sat there, taking it in. Not a mansion, not by a long shot, just a lone bulb swinging overhead, a folding chair, a duffel still half stuffed in the corner. But it was mine, and that hit the spot. I shuffled over to the counter, the linoleum chilly against my bare feet, and flicked on the hot plate. The beat-up kettle started hissing as water churned inside, and I scooped some instant coffee into a chipped mug. That sharp, gritty smell kicked up, a wake-up call wrapped in normal. While it brewed, I grabbed my notebook off the crate by the mattress, its spiral spine all bent and frayed. It was fat now, pages stuffed with ink, a sloppy record of nights unloading my soul. I cracked it open, scanning the rough scrawl. She never saw me, just the grime, that kicked it off, pure rage in every stroke. Later on, it shifted, I ain't the bad guy. I'm not her tool. Last week's entry, I'm still kicking. That's worth something. I ran a rough thumb over the words, a half-smile tugging at me. Not fancy, not polished, just real. With coffee in hand, I leaned on the counter, sipping slow. The stuff was harsh, bargain bin bitter, but it warmed me down to my bones. Cash wasn't exactly flowing, after splitting from Tara, I'd scraped by to cover the deposit here. The truck's muffler was shot, my boots were thinning out, and plumbing jobs barely kept the power on. But that heaviness? It had lifted, not completely, not yet, but enough to notice. No more dodging Tara's moods, no more grinding myself to dust to fit her mold. I felt looser, freer, like a pipe finally flushed clean. My phone buzzed again, Julia, bang on schedule. You still coming over? She asked when I picked up, her voice light with that steady vibe I'd started counting on. Yeah, I said, setting the mug down. I'll be there in 10. Great. Cody's tearing around the yard like a hurricane. Rescue me. I let out a rough chuckle, real and easy. Got you covered. I tugged on a flannel, grabbed my toolbox, and headed out. The stairs creaked under my boots as I went, the morning chill nipping at me in the alley. My truck sputtered awake, still a trooper despite its grumbles, and I cranked the window down, letting the breeze rush in. Julia's spot was a quick 15-minute haul, a small duplex on the town's edge, white paint peeling, but the yard neat, a tricycle tipped over by the steps. I pulled in, and there was Cody, her 5-year-old, whipping around on a shaky bike in wild circles, the chain flopping loose like a dead snake. Sam, he yelled, screeching to a halt, kicking up a puff of dirt with his sneakers. "It's broke again." "Looks that way," I said, stepping out. I mussed up his dark hair, same color as Julia's, and dropped down next to the bike. "Let's get you back in action." Julia popped out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, rocking a worn hoodie and a grin. "You're a lifesaver, you know." "He's been going since 6. "More like a pushover," I fired back, smirking as I fished a wrench out of my box. The chain fix was a breeze, slipped off the gear, nothing cracked. I looped it back on, cranked the bolts tight, spun the wheel to test it. Cody hovered close, bouncing like a jackrabbit, then let out a hoot when I handed it over. "All set." He took off like a shot, tires buzzing on the dirt, a whirlwind of kid energy. I straightened up, smearing grease across my jeans, and locked eyes with Julia. She let out a laugh, big, warm, slicing right through the morning air, and I couldn't hold it back. A low, easy chuckle rumbled out of me too, loosening something tight way down in my ribs. "That kid's a terror," I said, wiping my hands clean. "You're preaching to the choir," she replied, tipping her head toward the porch. "Need a coffee top-up?" "You've earned it." "Nah, gotta hit the road, work's piling up." I hoisted my toolbox but hung back a sec, watching Cody zip by in a blur. "He's a speed demon." "Way too quick," she said, shaking her head with a grin. "Thanks, Sam." "Seriously. No sweat." I caught her look, calm, no strings, just this quiet reliance we'd built up. Not love, not now, maybe not ever, but a base as sturdy as poured cement. I liked that. Liked her. It did the trick. Back in my truck, I fired up the engine and peeled out, the duplex fading in my rearview mirror. The radio sputtered to life, spitting out an old Springsteen track, Thunder Road, all rough edges and hope. I drummed my fingers on the wheel, humming along, the words sinking into me like a story I hadn't lived yet but felt in my bones. The screen door slams, Mary's dress waves, the sun climbed up, splashing gold across the windshield, and I sensed it, a change, small but real. A grin snuck onto my face, starting faint, then stretching wide, pulling my mug into something new and damn good, a prize I'd clawed out of the wreckage of what I'd ditched. The gig was a quick one, a drip-as-sink at a split-level place on Birch Lane, with peeling shutters and a mutt yapping in the yard. I rolled up, tires crunching gravel, and cut the engine. The radio died out, but that tune stuck with me, buzzing soft in my head as I grabbed my toolbox from the truck bed. I stepped out, boots solid on the dirt, and squinted at the house. An older lady waved from the porch, gray hair pulled back, her voice carrying over the wind. "You the plumber guy?" "That's me," I said, strolling up. "Here to fix your mess." She led me to the kitchen, and I got after it, same old drill. Wrench turning, water valve off, leak plugged in 10 minutes tops. She slipped me a crumpled 5 with a "thanks," and I was back in the truck, the day rolling out ahead, more gigs, more tinkering, more road to cover. Nothing wild, nothing showy, just a life. Mine, running smooth. I ain't got a ton, no fat bank account, no big dreams sketched out, no one at home with a plate of food waiting. But I've got this, the highway stretching out, my tools rattling in the back, the sun warming my arm through the rolled-down window. I've got Cody's toothy grin, Julia's laugh, that notebook crammed with chunks of me I battled to take back. And I've got this smile hanging on my face, a win nobody can snatch away. The truck growled along, hauling me into whatever's next, and I was ready. If this tale struck a chord with you, maybe the grind for some calm, the bite of tough calls, or those small victories that mean everything, drop me a line. Tell me what you think down below, or share a time you had to walk off to figure out who you really are.